Hello, hello, it's me, Arden Lee. I am back today with another video. And today, I want to talk about what's a bit of a touchy subject and has already raised a number of hackles online on my Facebook when I've been talking about it in a couple of different posts. And that subject that I want to talk about is why it is primarily the responsibility of men to ensure consent for sexual interactions of the heteronormative variety, especially when there is intoxication involved. Before I get into that, you probably know me already. I am the creator of the Repatterning Project, and I would love for you to come and check out our community. If you look down in the description box, you can find where to download your free PDF to learn more about the repatterning modality. And you can also join our community on Facebook. It's a free group where you get to connect with like-minded individuals who are also looking to optimize and hack their beliefs for the sake of their happiness and success. I hope you come and join us. In the meantime, yeah, let's get to this. So, this is a tough subject with a lot of nuance to it, and I'm really trying very hard to cover all my ground because there's so many ways that that things can happen. There's so many beliefs and misconceptions that we have around sex to begin with. Even just talking about sex can be very weighty because we have so many preconceived notions about it, and it's hard getting everyone on the same page. So I've collected my thoughts as best as possible, and what I hope to present to you is, hopefully a coherent viewpoint. And I understand that there are a lot of men out there, and that's what spurred the need for me to explain this so in so much detail. There are a lot of men out there who are like, if we were both drunk, why am I the one who assaulted her? She was drunk and she complains I assaulted her. Well, we both had sex. I was drunk too. Why am I the one who's responsible? And that's a good question. If we lived in a society where men and women were granted equal power in many, many different ways that I'm about to enumerate, that would feel fair, right? Okay, there's two parties. Both of them are drunk at the time, and both of them, end up having sex. Why is it so much more the man's responsibility to ensure that consent than it is the woman's? And there are a number of reasons for that, both having to do with our social conditioning, also having to do with systemic oppression, the way that men and women are treated differently in society, and also having a little bit to do with our biology. So I'm going to get to those one by one. And I want you to know, first of all, that absolutely men can be victims and survivors of sexual assault. I will never in a million years deny that. I have seen and known and loved men who were victims of sexual assault. And in this video, it is not my intention whatsoever to minimize their pain. Their pain is just as real as women's pain when they have been assaulted. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways that men can be assaulted in ways that are, I'm going to talk about scenarios in which it is possible for women to violate the consent of men. Virgil, get off the table. Sorry, my cat is misbehaving. You know better. There's a lot here. Sorry, I'm going to be breathing a lot through this because I want to be really meticulous with my words here. As I said, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of exceptions, and I want to make sure that I'm including those exceptions because I don't want to come across and say, look, men are always responsible, men can never be victims, it's always women that are victims. That's not true. But the places that this is coming up is when men are specifically asking that question, well, if we were both drinking, why am I the one who's responsible? So typically when that's happening, what those guys are thinking of is, a typical night of normal sex, right? Normal, vanilla, I hate saying normal sex, right? But let's just say vanilla, heterosexual sex between themselves and a woman who is someone that they've met or someone in their lives or whatever, and they are both intoxicated. I want to go through all the reasons why it is really men's responsibility to slow down and really ensure consent. And remember, you are not allowed to drive while drunk. You're not allowed to sign a contract while drunk. There's so many things that you're not allowed to do while drunk. You're not allowed to there's so many things that if you're drunk, it means that you didn't mean it, right? It means that you didn't, even if you sign a contract, it's like that doesn't count, right? Even legally, it doesn't count if you signed a contract when you're drunk. So I want you to just keep these things in mind, okay? So that's why consent really can't be had when someone is drunk. And men often say, well, I was drunk too. How do you know I consented? And certainly I want to go through the instances where there are exceptions to this rule. I hope you'll bear with me too. I have everything that I want to say, but as I said, I'm nervous talking about this. So because I really want to make sure that I'm thorough and I hit all of those points and I don't miss so very many of those exceptions to this overall rule. Okay, so the first reason why men, it is primarily, and notice I'm saying primarily, I'm not saying 100%, but I am saying primarily your responsibility to ensure consent during sex. The first reason is in most kinds of sex that we think of as sex, which I want to clear up. All right, I'll save that for a bit. Most sex that we think of as sex, about 75% of all possible sexual positions out there, men are the ones who are doing, they are the doers, and women are the doees, right? Now, this is not true across the board, but it requires a lot more active participation on men's part than it does on women. Men typically, sorry, my cat is you're being a nuisance today, you're not being helpful. In the vast majority of heteronormative sex, men are the ones who are in the active position. So for them to get their bodies to that space, to have an erection, which is, it's not like 100% that when men are drunk they can't perform, but it is a factor. If they're that drunk, it's like almost virtually impossible, not 100%, but I'm going to say like 98, 99% impossible to have intercourse with a man who is blackout drunk. First of all, he's not going to be able to get an erection in most cases. Not all, but in most. And he's also not going to be able to move. So in most sex that is happening consensually, that is happening, that men are thinking of like, oh, I just, both of me and this girl got drunk and we had sex together. Most of the time, the sex they're talking about involves active participation on the man's part. And it does not need to involve active participation on the woman's part. Her participation can be very passive. So the bar for men to participate actively in sex is very high. They typically have to be moving. They have to insert their penis. They have to, be able to get an erection while they're, under the influence or whatever. Whereas for a woman, she could be literally blackout drunk and that man could still have sex with her body, even though she is not participating at all. She could be passively, she could be lying on the bed. She could be, she could be, she could be roofied. She could be whatever. There's so many ways to still have sex with a woman when she's not capable of consent. It's much harder to have sex. It's not impossible, but it's much harder to have sex physically with a man who is not capable of consent. Now, I want to clear this part up. Not all sex is penis and vagina intercourse, right? Most people who are in the sex education community understand this distinction. You can certainly have sex that involves hands and mouths, and you can have sex that involves, you don't even need an erect penis to have a sexual experience, right? So men could certainly be groped. There are instances in which, a man could be blackout drunk and a woman could grope him with her hands, and that would absolutely be assault. That would absolutely be a woman assaulting that man. So that's, these are some cases in which, of course, this can happen, right? But primarily, when we're thinking of sex, when a guy just says, why am I the one who's responsible? Well, it's because you're the one who has a very high bar for your active participation in sex, whereas the woman does not. Her bar for participation is very low. She could be completely passed out and still have, you know, I mean, it would be rape, but she could, her body could be present in the act of a man having intercourse with it without her participation at all. So this is the first reason why it's super on y'all to ensure consent, especially when there is any level of intoxication, and you know, establishing consent before anyone is intoxicated, and not having sex with someone when they are intoxicated if there is absolutely any doubt in your mind. The second reason is that men are much physically stronger than women. So a woman who is trying to have sex with a man, you know, again, there may be like some, you know, if you're like, you know, a small guy and Ronda Rousey really decides that she wants to jump your bones, then yeah, of course you can be assaulted by a woman who is stronger than you. But on average, men are much stronger than women. And some things that men think of as just, you know, just dominance or just, you know, taking control or whatever, can be enough physical strength to overpower a woman and make her feel like she does not have a choice. Now, she might try and fight off that dude and she might fail. Or she might decide, you know what, I'm just gonna lay here and let him do this, because if I fight him off, that's actually probably going to be even worse for me, because, you know, because he might actually get angry if he's denied what he wants right now. And I would rather give into nonviolent sex against my will than resist him and have it potentially turn into violent rape. So I'm just going to hedge my bets here. I'm just going to lie here, and it's just going to be over. And this is a reality that women deal with because men are on the whole physically stronger than they are. You cannot always trust a woman's yes if she's not enthusiastic about it, if she's not, you know, if she's not actively participating, if she's just lying there. You know, it very well could be that she's not fighting you off because she's afraid if she starts fighting you off that you're going to get violent. I've had that happen to me before, you know, most cases, oh man, I don't really want to talk about it, man, but you know, like, in some cases I did fight the person off. I broke a dude's glasses once pushing him off of me, and he was surprised by that, you know, and in some cases I was just like, might as well just like get it over with, because even if I do fight the dude off, he's gonna still be angry and horny at the same time, and I'd rather the dude just have a fucking orgasm and go the fuck to sleep, you know, or just be done and be like, everyone knows, like, if a dude's done having sex with you, you know, especially if it's someone who doesn't, I mean, I shouldn't generalize, if it's someone who doesn't care about you, if it's someone who's not your partner and is actually just wants that display of dominance over you, you know, they kind of lose their Jones once they've shot their wad, right? That's like the best way to get them to, it's not the best way, but sometimes when you're a woman, it feels like it's the easiest way to just get them to stop, you know? So is just to give in and get it over with. So because of that physical strength, because there's always that threat of coercion there when a man is stronger than you, that is another reason, men, that you are responsible for ensuring affirmative consent and not just kind of going with what you think is natural and you know, then getting surprised when you have a rape charge thrown at you later. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3. Reason number 3 is that in the patriarchy that we live in, women get conditioned to attend to men's needs. Women are brought up to excuse men's bad behavior, like, oh, just ignore him, he's just pulling his pigtails because he likes you or whatever. They're brought up to you know, learn how to keep homes for men, you know, even in today's, you know, very feminist, very women-driven society. Maybe it's not a feminist society, but you know, we certainly encourage young women to, you know, women are currently outperforming men in their college studies and things like that, but there's still that cultural conditioning of like, be wifey material, like learn how to take care of your guy, learn to cook, learn how to please him, buy this issue of Cosmo that has, you know, 50 ways to give a better blowjob or whatever. I used to be a dating coach. I wrote blowjob articles myself. Like, I contributed to all of that, you know? It's wonderful when you have a loving partner that you really want to give a good blowjob to, but when you're being bombarded all the time with all these messages from the media that says your worth is contingent upon how valuable you are to a man and what kind of man is choosing you, that shit gets in your head, right? So women are conditioned to naturally want to please men and excuse their behavior as it is. Men are not conditioned in this way, okay? You do not pick up a copy of a man's magazine and open it up and see, you know, a whole bunch of different articles on the best way to perform cunnilingus. You just don't. You just don't see that. Maybe in the last couple of years, people are finally starting to talk about, you know, how to, you know, giving men more ways to please women. But even in the pickup community that I have history with, there's so many would-be PUAs out there who didn't even want to listen to me, a PUA instructor who is a woman who is trained formally by, you know, Neil Strauss, Mystery, and Adam Lyons, who are like the top 3 PUAs in the world. They were like, we don't have anything to learn from women, you know, like, I don't have anything to learn from a woman. And it's like so ridiculous. Like you're choosing, you know, instead of listening to women and figuring out, what do you need from me? I want to date you. I want to have sex with you. What do you need from me in order to want me and in order to trust me? What they're doing instead is they're going and they're doing it to impress their homeboys. They're doing it to impress their bros. How many of these bodies, how many women's bodies can I rack up in a week so that I can impress my friends, so that I can be the studliest person? So again, our culture does not, even when men are looking to improve their dating skills, there's so many pockets of that culture where they're not even doing it for the sake of pleasing women. They're doing it for the sake of broing out with their homeboys, right? So we don't live in a society that treats you know, that treats these two things equally. And in particular, you look at Hollywood movies, right? Women are conditioned to like be perfect, be sexy, be all these wonderful, amazing things, you know, that are so difficult to be. And there's so many dudes who are like, oh, these movies are telling me that all I need to do to get a girlfriend is the bare minimum. And I'm entitled to one. Like, when I get my happy ending, it means I get the girl. I get this super amazing hot girl just for me being regular ass dude who, like, you know, got up and got himself dressed that day essentially and tried his best. And if I don't get her, I'm gonna stalk her outside her window with a giant boombox, ignore her boundaries because that's romantic, right? So we are trained by the media we consume how we behave. So men are trained to feel entitled to women. Women are trained to defer to and to please men. Now, this doesn't happen in every man and every woman, thank God, but these are the messages that we're bombarded with because this is the culture we live in. So again, this is reason number 3, dudes, why it is your responsibility to ensure consent during sex with a woman, because she's gonna have a much harder time saying no to you, right? Another thing, and I actually looked up the statistic on this because, you know, some dude in the comments started arguing with me. There are 4 types of trauma reactions that I'll probably get into in like a longer video, but the 4 types are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So we all know fight, right? Something happens, we get triggered, and we throw the dukes up. Nope, I'm gonna fight this one out. Flight, we run away from the situation, we avoid it, right? Freeze is we're actually just like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just not gonna do anything. This was one of mine. When I was sexually assaulted a lot, I would just be like, and which gave like men free reign to basically just touch my body while I froze, right? It doesn't make sense logically, but this is what happens. This is what, you know, you can look it up. I'm not even gonna get into proving it right now. It just happens. And the 4th one is fawn. And fawning is basically you slip into that pleaser mode. You slip into like, oh, there's something you want from me. Let me please you because that's gonna help my survival. So statistically speaking, men are much more likely to react with fight or flight, which means that they either get violent or they just fucking ghost you, or whereas women are much more likely to freeze or fawn. They either dissociate, you know, and just kind of leave their bodies or you know, black out, or you know, that would be the freeze, or fawning, you know, they decide like, hey, I'm just gonna try and like defer to you. I'm gonna be pleasing to you. So you have to know these things because sometimes women's reactions in that moment when you're making a move on them might look like freezing or fawning, and you might be like, well, she's not fighting and she's not flying, right? She's not throwing the dukes up and she's not getting the fuck out of here. So this must be a yes because I'm a dude, and if I wasn't a yes, that would be what I would be doing. Now, there's many exceptions where men absolutely can be sexually assaulted by women, right? If there's a power differential, if she's emotionally blackmailing him and saying, you have to have sex with me or else I'm leaving you, or you have to have sex with me or else I'm going to tell your brother you're a bad person, or maybe she's his teacher, or she's his employer, or for whatever reason he's financially dependent on her at the moment, and she's like, well, I'm paying the rent, like, you better put out. Again, that is assault, right? If that guy is blackout drunk and she gropes him, that's assault. If he wakes up and she's blowing him and she hasn't gotten, blanket consent for that in their relationship, again, that's assault. There are so many instances in which men can be assaulted by women. I am not ruling those out. But for 90% of the cases where men are saying, she was drunk, I was drunk, we had PIV, vanilla sex, and everything seemed fine. Why is it my fault? Why am I the one who's responsible for assaulting her? Why is the story never goes that she assaulted me? Well, bro, it's because of societal conditioning, the fact that you're stronger than she is, the fact that it required far much more active participation on your part, and in the end, this is not about you actually feeling that you were assaulted, that you were victimized. This is actually just about you wanting to avoid responsibility for your actions. If a man came to me and described, an instance of, hey, I had sex with a woman last night and man, I feel really violated, I would absolutely hold so much space and so much compassion for that. But that's not what these guys are saying. They're just saying, she was drunk, I was drunk, why is it my responsibility? Anyway, now you have your fucking answer, dudes. That is the answer to why it is your responsibility to ensure consent from a woman. So if you don't know 100%, like with 100% certainty, like you already have blanket consent for sex, then don't. If you don't know 100% certainty that she wants this, that you've already discussed it, that you're in a relationship, that that like, hey, when we're both drunk, it's cool if we have sex or whatever. If that's not the situation, then don't do it. Just don't. It's my friend Adam Lyons says, if she's into you, she'll still be into you when the alcohol wears off. And if you're worried that she's not into you when the alcohol wears off, then you definitely should not make a move. So again, the reason that is men's responsibility primarily to ensure consent during any sex that happens, especially when there is intoxication involved, even mutual intoxication, is again because of privilege. Because our society supports men so much more in being entitled to what they want, making those moves. That's reason number 4. I was like, I knew there were 4 reasons that I thought of, and I couldn't think of the other one. The 4th reason is that women are not supported in society in making moves the way that men are. Men are encouraged to make that move, like to be the man, to man up, to grow a pair and make a move on a woman. Whereas the woman is told that if she makes a move on a man, that can be aggressive or unfeminine. Even in pickup, we have terms for things like anti-slut defense and last-minute resistance, which is what, Hey, sorry, I got interrupted by a call coming in on my phone. I'm just going to wrap this up anyway. This has gone longer than I wanted it to, and hopefully, as you've been able to tell, this is kind of not the most easy thing for me to talk about, especially this week, especially given my own trauma, and especially given the backlash that I've already received for speaking out about it. But I will just recap those 4 reasons that men are primarily responsible, not fully responsible, but primarily responsible for ensuring consent, especially in heteronormative sex, especially during times of mutual intoxication. And those reasons are, first and foremost, the bar for activity during sexual performance. Secondly, physical strength. Third, entitlement, the patriarchal condition of entitlement versus the patriarchal conditioning of women to please and to make excuses for men. And the corollary to that also being the fight and flight response in men when they are triggered versus the freeze and fawn response in women, primarily when they are triggered. Again, that's a statistical difference. It's not across the board, but it is a trend. It is very common. And finally, the 4th reason being that men are conditioned to make moves by society, by a culture that if two people are drunk, if a man and woman are drunk, a man has a cultural incentive to close that gap even in the drunkenness and make the hookup happen so that he can brag about it to his buddies. Whereas a woman who faces things like scorn and slut shame, especially for having too many partners, has no incentive societally for making that notch on the belt. In fact, she has incentive. As I mentioned, in the pickup community, there were terms for things like anti-slut defense and last-minute resistance, meaning that even when a woman does want to consent, she sometimes may put up a token resistance so that a guy doesn't think that she is easy. That's possible. Also, I don't want to put that out there as law because I don't want everyone thinking that all resistance is token resistance. And hopefully that as women, it's also our responsibility to really own our yes and own our no as best we can. But in the meantime, those are the 4 reasons why men are primarily responsible for ensuring consent in heteronormative sexual relations. And I'll go over those again. That is, the bar to sexual performance happening, physical strength, patriarchal conditioning of entitlement versus people pleasing in the genders, with the trauma response dichotomy as a corollary to that, and finally that women are not incentivized to multiply partners in the ways that men are. So again, yes, of course, sexual assault can happen to men. Yes, of course, sexual assault can happen to men and be perpetrated by a woman. Sexual assault can happen to a man when he is drunk. Sexual assault can happen to a man when he is not drunk. There are many, many ways that sexual assault can happen, but speaking to the overall trend of 2 people coming together and having sex when both are intoxicated, these are the 4 reasons why men are primarily responsible for ensuring that consent. And in the end, as my friend Adam Lyons says, who is a men's coach, a men's dating coach, among other things, he says, look, if she's drunk and just don't do it. Just don't. She'll still be as into you when the alcohol has worn off, and if you're afraid she won't be into you without the alcohol, then that's really the reason not to do it. So this is a whole long ass video that I'm making, and y'all can like debate the points or the rhetoric, but at the end of the day, just like if you have any question about it, just don't have sex with someone when they're drunk. Just cuddle. If the sex is meant to happen, it will be there. So it really just comes down to some of the simplest things. So thank you guys for paying attention. This was really not the easiest video in the world for me to make, but I think it's important in our collective that right now we're talking about when people come together in that state, and why there is a power imbalance, and frankly there is a power imbalance. It is a real thing. It exists. Privilege exists. You can talk about it all day long and try and say that it doesn't, but that doesn't mean that but it's real. I could point to this couch and be like, this couch doesn't exist, but it totally does. It's right here. I'm sitting on it. And FYI, I'll just put this out there. I really don't give a fuck if you disagree with this. If you're a dude and you're gonna make a whole bunch of shitty asshole comments on my YouTube, like I'm just gonna delete them because I've had enough incels and MRAs like attack me in the past. It's whatever, y'all. It's like this is the price for doing the work that I do. But what I will say is that if you continue to resist what I'm saying, you will end up with sexual assault charges against you eventually. If you want to defend your right to have sex with a woman who's intoxicated, you are going to end up, your choices right now are either affirmative consent, celibacy, or risking jail time. That's it. You can either listen to what I'm saying as a woman and listen to what women everywhere are saying about the kinds of terms that we need to have sex on our own terms that feel good to us, in ways that we're going to feel good about, that all of us are going to feel good about. You can listen to us and learn those boundaries of consent, learn how to enforce those things. You can choose to be celibate. You don't have to have sex with women. You don't have to have sex with anybody. You don't even have to masturbate, whatever. I don't care what you do, but you don't have to have sex. If this feels unfair to you, you do not have to have sex with women. Just give it up, fine. Just don't do it if it doesn't feel good. And third, you can try to do things the way that they've always been done, but clearly, as we've seen, there is a tide turning in our culture, and women are speaking up, and we're not putting up with this for any longer. You may have seen, in the past where where men have gotten away with this kind of behavior before, but the tide really is turning. There is more dialogue about it now, and it's not going to happen the same way going into the future. So you will risk jail time. You will risk sexual assault charges. It's just facts. It's just facts. There is no putting this toothpaste back in the tube, as much as you want it to be. So if you're a man and you're listening to this, those are your three choices: affirmative consent, celibacy, or sexual assault charges. That's it. So you've been warned. I hope you choose one of the first two. I hope for your sake, for the sake of everyone, this toothpaste is not going back in the tube. It is what it is. You are primarily responsible, if you are a man, for assuring affirmative consent in your heteronormative sexual relations, and especially in times of mutual intoxication. And Virgil agrees with me. So thank you all for listening. All right. Tune in next time.